Our next panelist is Dr. Shaista Shameem. She hails from a wonderful family background of Fiji-renowned academics, of which she is one of Fiji's esteemed lawyers. She has worked in the areas of human rights, justice, social change, and international law for the United Nations, as well as in the Fijian context. She is a graduate of the University of the South Pacific. She holds a doctorate in sociology from the University of Waikato and a master's in law from the University of Auckland. She also holds a doctorate in judicial science. Dr. Shameem has been a fellow also of the Royal Society of Arts, and she is currently the acting Vice Chancellor of the University of Fiji and is the Dean of the Justice Devendra Pathik School of Law. We welcome to the podium Dr. Shameem.
Thank you very much. Sometimes it pays not to argue about small things. Good evening, everyone. I am absolutely delighted to be here tonight to speak to you about a subject that has been very close to my heart, as you probably all realize, for a very long time. I'm very grateful to Dialogue Fiji for having invited me, and in particular, I acknowledge the chairperson. I don't know whether he's still here or not, but here is there, right? Good. And I also acknowledge fellow panelists and of course, the CEO of Dialogue Fiji as well. And in particular, I acknowledge the presence of Reverend Yambaki, who has been a long-time educator, not in the university context at all, because really sometimes education doesn't matter in the university context, but he has been a community educator for a very long time. In fact, when I first started my work with NGOs way back in the 1970s, I don't want to tell you when exactly, but it was Reverend Yambaki and his socialist principles that guided young people like myself. And at that time, the University of the South Pacific was very young. Now, I've got, first of all, I want to thank Professor Jito for such a passionate rendition of the subject matter, which I was going to put an incendiary bomb underneath this whole topic, but I'm a lawyer, so I'm not passionate like that, It's wonderful when it happens, because you can admire it, and I completely agree with what he's saying. And the reason why I'm agreeing with that is going to come up in a minute, because the next slide, please. Because the panel topic that was given to me was not a question mark. All right? It was a statement of fact. And I said, hello, I am an educator, and you never give a statement of fact that you cannot prove. So, or show by evidence. Now, that's my lawyer thing coming out. So when I said declining standards of tertiary education, you're not talking about the University of Fiji, because of course we know for a fact that that's not the case. And I'm about to show it to you in case you think I'm just talking off the top of my head. So I said, not the University of Fiji. And why do I say that? Is because we have got the data to prove it. Next slide, please. So, how do you measure quality? I think that's the perennial, difficult elephant in the room. When you talk about declining standards, first of all, you say declining, all right, question mark, standards, okay, what are the standards, how do we measure? And then quality, what on earth is quality? Because what is quality to the industry? They can say no quality because they can't find the right people for the factory, let's say. You can see my socialism coming out here. But somebody else will say, but that's quality because they have the soft skills that somebody else talked about earlier on. And it's not just the hard qualification of being an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor, but actually having, communication skills, integrity. What Pandit Bhuandat was sitting there, Panditji will call human values. Where are they? Not moral values, they're different again, but human values of etiquette, courtesy, and so on, which seems to me nowadays employers are looking for as well. So the notion of quality and the definition is extremely important. Now, looking at the University of Fiji, let me tell you about quality because I think we have it. If you look at one of the ways in which to judge whether or not your students are coming out, with quality education is to see whether or not they're dropping out. That's the first thing. Every academic, every university looks at the dropout rate and says, oh my goodness, if we've got too many students just coming into the system and then leaving it without getting their qualification, so we can't retain them, and then they can't complete clearly, that's really a problem for the education. Then you start looking at things like quality, which is what we look at. But I can tell you, because we keep the data strictly, because we're worried about people who talk about quality, and I can tell you that our retention rate going up to 2023, this is post-COVID, was 92.6%. We never even thought that we were going to retain students like that. If you look at the by the way, I love my old University of the South Pacific, but everyone would have seen the islands business, right? What's interesting about this particular islands business is that it talks about retention rate of USP, and it also talks about the retention rate at New Zealand universities. And I can tell you that as far as the New Zealand university, we're way ahead of USP, by the way, apologies, but I have to, the fact is a fact, right? According to this article, you can challenge Samantha Magic. But as far as we're concerned, look, New Zealand universities, their retention rate was 86%. Now, our retention rate, 92.6%, is not too bad at all. Do you think so? I mean, if you can do your sums. And then we have a completion rate of 79.4%. We have in 2019, look at our retention rate, 22.2%, and our completion rate was 54%. That has gone up in the 5 years to that incredibly admirable percentage, which means that we're doing something right, because students want to stay and they want to complete their qualification as well. It isn't, just that the economic situation is such outside that we better stay and complete the degree, because we also know that some of our students who would want to do law, enrolled in law and so on, actually left halfway through and went to the United States to do caregiving because it paid $10,000 a month. They could stay 4 years at university and not get to $10,000 a month at the end, no matter what brilliant industry we have out there. Now the next slide, this is the game changer, I think, and has been. So we're obliged to do graduate surveys, because Fiji Higher Education Commission sitting there will tell us every year your review is coming up, what's your graduate employability survey. So we do this. At graduation, we capture all our students and say, fill the form and tell us whether or not you've been employed or you have got a job. And look at our, you'll be able to see the different colors. But certainly in 2020, we had a 67.3% of employability, and then in 2023, which is just last year, it's 70.1%. In other words, not only do we retain students and they complete, but also they're employable. They are being employed out there, because industry can come back and tell us, well, the quality is no good. We're not going to take students from the University of Fiji. We're going to prefer students from USP or FNU or whatever, but that's not the case for our students. And I would like to see what the other universities, they could say that we have got much less than the others, but I don't see any data to prove that. The next slide. Why is it that we have quality? And I'm absolutely convinced that it is our methodology in teaching. So everyone was talking about hard skills and soft skills. We do focus on soft skills as much as we do on hard. So you're not only an accountant or lawyer, whatever, but we're also teaching people to communicate, to get on with each other, to respect each other, and so on. And so we have a unique methodology. It's the DRUA, which is a journey in holistic education. We have Gurukul, because your University of Fiji is owned by the Arya Pratinidhi Sabha, and they have this ancient 6,000-year-old tradition of Gurukul. I'm not going to explain it. If you want to know more, you ask Pandit Bonda. And then we have Praxis, which is a mixture, not TVET, it's a mixture of theory and practical. So it's called Praxis because it's a dialectical relationship. And then HighFlex is our top hat platform, which means you can do simultaneously online and face-to-face, in-person face. Say, we bought that product. Now the last word there, it's a Greek word, difficult word, but it's autopoiesis, and I think Professor Jita would know it because it's a mathematical term, and that is that you've got to understand systems and how they work. So you have education in context, not education out there and the whole country moves in a different direction. So that's a really important thing in terms of our methodology, and everybody at university knows it. Next slide, please. We have Quality Assurance Agency's global accreditation. So it's everything, not just one program or another program, the whole lot. And that is valid for 5 years. There is a mid-cycle review as well. And that took us 2 years to achieve because we would give them the answers, and then they would come back and say, no, this answer is not good enough. And this was a whole struggle of about 2 years, and finally we got it. So this is why we have the QAA badge. Next slide, please. That QA badge is based on 10 European standards and guidelines. And you can see there, I'm not going to read that all because I've only got like half a minute left. Policy, you need to have a policy, design and approval of programs, which FHEC does, or HECOF does. Student-centered learning. For us, student-centered learning means self-directed learning. That's what pedagogy is all about. Not pedagogy, we don't like pedagogy. Pedagogy is me doing what I'm doing right now, talking to you fellas. Pedagogy is when I will get you guys to say what you're doing. It's easier for the lecturer, believe me. Teaching staff qualifications. By 2024, we expect to have 90% of our staff with PhDs. It's a real push that we're doing. And by next year, it should be 100%. So all of those things are assessed. Next slide, please. Now we have a review coming up. We're the guinea pigs in this. When I asked FHEC who else was going to get reviewed, he said, no, you guys go first. So we're going to fail first? We're not going to fail, I'm telling you. So what the Higher Education Commission does, it's got its own regulations for quality assessment, right? And those are the things that the Higher Education Commission will come to do. They will come to our university, they will look at everything, the girls' toilets, for example, whether they're clean. They'll go to whether we have disability, whether we have enough gender balance. Well, they don't look at gender balance as much, but we're going to put it in there. But all of those things they want to see, whether we have a strategic plan. Not only that, but whether we're following our strategic plan. That's the important thing. And our strategic plan is there. It's 5 years. It's about holistic education. Next slide, please. Thank you. Quality assessment personnel. Who judges? Who judges quality? Who's going to tell us? Is it industry that's going to tell us? Is it educators that's going to tell us? It's going to be other universities. Is there peer review, for example? That would be great. Let's go and judge USP. Let's go and judge FNU. Who judges quality? Only those appropriately qualified. You can't just bring in anybody to judge, because you've got to have quality standards that are appropriately assessed, right? The regulations of the Higher Education Commission very clear on qualifications of the review team. Now I can tell you, and of course the FHEC director agrees with me, I'm sure, is that not always respected and not always complied with. Because we know who's going to judge us, because we've got to look at it. Who's going to be on the review team? So we say, hey, what? That doesn't even follow the regulations. And so we brought up this issue about follow the regulations. As the lawyer, we need to follow the law. You don't follow the law, you get chaos and anarchy. We all know that. Okay, let's go on. Conclusion, you'll be happy to know. So we meet the international standards of quality assurance, and I've already said about the 90% PhDs. Now, this is where we come to the crux of the matter, right? And I'm pointing my finger at industry right now. The problem with the skills gap in Fiji is socio-economic, and not to be blamed on the university. I completely agree with Professor Jito there, at least not on us. People have migrated historically all the time. I mean, you look at the history of the world and it's one of migration. People are going to always look for greener pastures because they want their kids to be educated, they want to have a better life, etc. Now, industry must pay their people better with better conditions of work. It's as simple as that. When my graduates, or even halfway through, leave the country to go for the $10,000 a month caregiver salary, it's because it's $10,000 a month. If somebody at the university, as an accountant, let's say, graduated, goes to New Zealand and gets 3 times as much salary there, they're gonna go. We're all part of this. I left, a long time ago. Some of you did. We all had experiences overseas. But because we were invested in Fiji, we came back. We said, we're going to help. We got our qualifications overseas, and we're coming back. We help the country. But not everybody does that, right? Finally, we have to encourage young people to be invested in Fiji. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Whatever it is that you're looking for, that's what I'm saying. Ask the right question. It's not what the answer is what the question is. That's the issue. Why is it, where's the skill gap? Okay, fine. Why is it people are leaving? That's not a question for universities. That's the question for policymakers. And for people who put salaries and don't pay them enough and are exploitative in wherever you are, whichever big industry you are. And another thing is that, my final point, and that is that I saw at the time of COVID what happened to tourism. We're talking about tourism like it's the manna from heaven, you know. But the thing is, I sat in my office at Soweni campus, and that's where tourism is, you know. And I saw all the buses in the morning going to work, taking the workers to the hotels, all very happy, nicely dressed, everything. COVID came within, I absolutely swear on that, within 48 hours, those buses stopped running. In other words, if you have an industry that is so vulnerable to climate disasters or pandemics or whatever, that's a no-brainer, right? Where's our plan B? What is our industry really? And then half those industries, and I can say this with some confidence, half those the industries that we know, who does a pollution check? You know, they're spewing stuff into the atmosphere and causing climate disaster everywhere. We contribute to climate disaster ourselves, you know. We can't just keep blaming the Australians and everyone else and putting our hand out for the money, loss and damages. We do it ourselves. And so and also, a lot of these industries, they produce NCD food that causes diabetes. You go around and see kids are eating noodles, and sometimes they don't even bother to put boiling water in the noodles. They just crunch the noodles like that at lunchtime. It's a very serious matter. It's not a laughing matter at all. It's a tragedy. So these are the big companies in Fiji. Are we holding them to account or not? First on wages, second on conditions, and thirdly on what they're actually doing by damaging the people and the environment. So unless your Dialogue Fiji is going to, any other NGO sitting here, and educators and everyone else, takes the bull by the horns and talks about industry and responsibility of industry. Frankly, I don't want to have anybody from the University of Fiji in those industries that are polluting the environment. What is the point of going to COP how many times and then, you know, saying, oh yes, we're going to do this in climate change and we're going to be part of Ocean Pacific or whatever? No, sorry. I have a sense of responsibility as an educator.